Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the HerStory Online Summit 2025, a platform that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'm the founder and global curator of the HerStory movement. And I'm really honored to be joining you today from Melbourne, Australia. To begin with, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and to extend that respect to all First Nations people joining us from around the world. Over the next 9 days, we will dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of remarkable women. These are stories of courage, resilience, creativity, and leadership. Stories that remind us that when women rise, communities and nations rise with them. This summit is more than just a series of talks. It's a global circle, a space for inspiration, connection, and transformation. Together, we will share knowledge, ignite conversations, and plant seeds of change. So I invite you to go and grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and open your heart and allow yourself to be inspired by the incredible journeys that we will hear today. This is her story because every woman's voice matters and every story has got the power to change the world. So, as we transition into our speakers for today, it gives me great pleasure to introduce an amazing young woman. I had the pleasure of interviewing her on our podcast earlier this week. So, Ruth, welcome, welcome, welcome to the tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's so amazing to be able to join my voice with so many others. So, yeah, I'm Ruth Faulkner. I am currently in the UK in London, but I'm a digital nomad. So, I'm often based between the UK, Australia, Europe. I run my business that way. Toucan Content is a borderless brand content and comms collective, and I focus on women-led projects and purpose-driven projects. So I want to talk to you a little bit about a story that's driven both my goals and my business and share that with you today. So when I say I focus on purpose-driven and women-led projects, that sounds lovely. But really what I'm trying to do is help the people that I work with be more human and more open in the way that they communicate about the great work that they're doing. And it sounds a little bit silly, that needing to be more human, because we all are. But actually, it isn't. I think we have started to put up barriers and boundaries that are stopping us showing up as open, kind of honest humans in the workplace, especially when it comes to business. And that's what I want to take us through. Now, as humans, one of the things I think we respond to most, and what her story is clearly all about, is stories. It's personal stories and sharing those openly and honestly that leads to connection. So I'll start with a story. Shortly after I started my business, early last year, I didn't have tons of work on. I needed to kind of get my time doing creative projects. And I felt like actually was more than happy to give my time away pro bono if it meant that it made a difference. So I went onto LinkedIn and I told my network that I wanted to give away 100 hours pro bono to help women focus organizations. In reality, probably ended up more like 300 hours after I met those women and got very excited by the work we were doing. But I picked International Women's Day to go out and do this and to share this offer. And obviously it was kind of thematically appropriate, but I actually picked International Women's Day for a personal reason. International Women's Day has always meant something to me, being a kind of woman in business. But a couple of years ago, it started to mean something very different and much more personal. On International Women's Day a few years back, I took a test and I learned that I had an unwanted pregnancy. It felt very ironic that I'd found this out on International Women's Day. That wasn't lost on me. I was actually incredibly frustrated to be a woman and having to deal with these things. But that being said, I was very clear about my decisions and my options, and I chose to abort, which I was able to do so easily in the UK. And I felt very supported by the health services through that process. So when I went out onto LinkedIn and offered my pro bono services, I shared this story because it was the reason that was driving me to want to work with women's organizations, especially related to women's health, especially related to women's rights. I wanted to give back because I felt lucky to get the option to make the choice that I did, the one that was right for my life. And also, I wanted to work with more women. I had often been working in a more male-centered organizations. I started my career as a sports journalist, so you can imagine quite how male-dominated that field is. I then have been working in advertising, in consulting, and all of these are very male-centered organizations. So I really wanted to focus on working with women to make a change. What I didn't know was the impact that would come from putting my story out there, which was a vulnerable story, on LinkedIn when I did this. The reaction and the connection that was created from sharing that one story felt completely new to me. And it really felt like it changed both my life and then the trajectory of where my business went as a result of that. It led to the pro bono work that I was looking to do, but those became long-term kind of client relationships and, with brilliant charities that I adore working on. But it also gave me a very clear focus. I was doing bits of everything before this, but now I really wanted to focus on people and purpose over profit with that center around women. But the connections that I couldn't have expected from this was actually that other women that saw my story might feel seen. I remember one person that reached out to me. I'd never met her, I'd met her once before at a conference years before. We weren't close. We certainly weren't talking on a personal level. But because she'd seen that I'd shared this, she reached out and she said, I was exactly where you were a month or two ago. I'm still feeling it. I went through this experience. I found out I was pregnant. I had to abort, but I couldn't tell anyone. And she explained to me how she felt she wasn't able to share this with her friends and family in her life because it felt uncomfortable to do so. And that she wasn't even able to tell her bosses at work. So she couldn't request any time off for what is a painful procedure. And the point that she had to work through this kind of really stuck with me because it's the impact of us not being able to talk openly about the things that happen to so many women that then knocks on to actually putting those women and individuals at risk in not being open and not being vulnerable with the things that are going on with us as a personal level in business and corporate environments. We end up being left alone, feeling like we can't tell anyone and dealing with things on our own while trying to show up and do our best at work every day. And it doesn't make sense to me at all. 1 in 3 women in the UK will have this exact same experience, and yet it's certainly not talked about that openly. A few of the reactions I had, and they were positive too, were like, I can't believe you've spoken about this on a professional platform. Like, that's really brave. I'm shocked that you felt able to do so. It's like, I don't know why it's shocking because it is a relatively common occurrence. So now I have shared this story openly a few times since, but that post was the first time. And what I do understand and why it did shock people is that it's terrifying. I feel, nervous when I share it with you here today. I feel nervous every time I put it out into a professional platform. There's a lot going on in the world, so you worry about what blowback you might get on you. I've spent a lot of time now building a business. I don't want to blow back on that either. But I think that taking the risk of sharing your story actually has this big possibility to help others. And if a lot more of us did it, probably wouldn't actually be a big deal anymore. It wouldn't be terrifying. It would become commonplace. And then people might feel supported and less isolated when they go through things like this. So while that occurrence, it doesn't define me now, it's a few years ago, I do look at it as kind of a turning point that changed my life. So the journey leading up to kind of finding out I was pregnant and having the abortion was quite turbulent as well. I had been going through divorce. I'd taken time off for mental health leave. I was refinding myself as an individual. Then I had this occurrence with the unwanted pregnancy. It genuinely felt like that moment I kind of hit my bottom. But the thing about hitting bottom is then you only go up. And I started to reevaluate what was important to me in my life and how I wanted to build a life that felt safe and value aligned and like I could be myself. Because I found it very hard to continue to show up in the way that I always had through my career in my corporate role while I was going through all of these things. I found it hard to leave my emotions at the door. I found it hard to be going through trauma and not expressing that to the people around me. I found it hard to put on a veneer, a mask, because I think that, if I didn't have to, maybe that it could have been a much more comfortable experience for me. So I refocused what I wanted to do with my life. I left my corporate career to start my own business by the end of the year. But with my business, I decided I wanted to remodel, reapproach what the standard was, reject what's normally expected in business. I spent time thinking about how I put people and purpose over profit, still keeping myself alive, of course, but really actually trying not to squeeze margins in the wrong ways that then ultimately squeeze people instead. And trying to do it in a way that was kind to myself in the ways that I work. Allowing me to kind of show up with openness and empathy in workplace and picking clients that I could work with where I know I could do that. As another example, I remember having to join kind of having a presentation in my diary, and it was with the CEO of a charity, a women's charity. And that day, unexpectedly, the finalization of my divorce came through. I had the official notice, and you never know when that day is going to hit because it takes time and legalese. And it came through, and I went, well, that's hit me with like an emotional baton, and I'm supposed to show up and present in an hour or so. And I kind of went, I could do this, probably won't do it very well because my head is not where it's supposed to be, or I could honestly tell them what's going on. And because I'd built my business with openness from the core and had been open and, myself with my clients from day one, I was able to email the CEO and say, hi, this is happening with me today. If there's an urgency, I could probably still join the call, but I feel like there's not a time pressure. Could we push it to next week? I'll be much more able to be much more present then. And they came back and they're like, of course, no problem at all. We're here for you. Let us know if you want to talk. And I think that's where we need to get to in business. We need to allow people to share what's going on with their lives and not consider that unprofessional. If anything, consider it more professional because it allows people to do their very best work. I think this is an experience that's not just, unique to me. I've spoken to so many friends, so many colleagues who've gone through similar things. I think it's true for many women. The corporate space has been built around a kind of male-centered model, and actually the human personal elements that tend to be especially true for women haven't easily been accepted, whether that's talking about menopause or periods or just kind of having emotion and more feminine traits showing up that way in work has been considered unprofessional. And I think that's what we need to change. I remember right at the start of my career in an advertising agency, being told that I couldn't tell a client I'd been off sick, because to be off sick, it seems unprofessional. The client won't like working with us if you're off sick. Like, okay, so to be sick, to be vulnerable, that's the core of being human, but that's considered unprofessional. If we have to keep putting on masks, making ourselves appear harder, putting on armor, we're not going to be able to show up in the workplace and do the things in the best way we can. So that's what I'm trying to change.
Wow, Ruth, what a story. Unfortunately, it's a story that is more common than uncommon.
Yes.
And until we start talking about these issues openly, a lot of women will languish in shame,
Mm-hmm.
in the shadows, alone and isolated. Now, you shared a deeply personal story on LinkedIn about your abortion experience. What gave you the courage to be so open on a professional platform?
Oh gosh, I don't think it's courage. I was absolutely petrified. But it was what was like center in my head and my mental space at that time. And I
Mm,
felt like I needed to share it out externally. Um, I could have just gone out and said, "Hey, look, I want to do this pro bono work." And I probably still would have got a good reaction back because of the nature of the work. But I
yeah.
wanted to explain my reasons and explain my drive. Um, and I also deeply feel then, as I do now, that there was no reason I shouldn't be able to. All that there was like a fear because of the environments that I'd been used to. Um,
Mm,
and I had a fear of backlash that ultimately didn't come. So the fear of doing something is always much worse than doing it.
yeah. Now, you've said that we put up barriers that stop us showing up as honest humans in the workplace.
Yeah.
What do you think causes those barriers, and how can we begin to dismantle them?
I mean, that's a big question. I think it's actually just the nature of the way work has been more historically. Obviously, we're still not there. It's been taking time to have women in more senior roles, in leadership roles. And if I look at, I would say like the 90s and kind of 2000s, you did start to get women move into those roles, but the
Mm,
reasons they were able to do so is because they masked and they put on armor and they were very hard and strong like men. And lots of women, famous women have talked about this openly. Like they got to their boardroom roles because they acted the boardroom way. And I
mm.
think we're now in this next phase of it, which is like actually we can be in these roles that command respect, but while being ourselves. And I think that's the like next phase of equality in the workplace.
Now, many people told you that they were shocked that you had shared such a story on a professional platform.
Mm.
Why do you think society still separates the professional from the personal?
um I think it might be to do with trying to make sure it's not messy, trying to make sure it's clean and clear. You're not talking about finances in the same conversation as nappies or something like that. I
Mm,
think they might be trying to put up kind of clear barriers. But I think it's getting more accepted in some areas. So
yeah,
whether it is talking about maternity leave or I think it's different in different countries, but certainly in the UK, there's much more acceptance to talk about perimenopause and menopause now. But then
yeah.
there's certain subjects that still haven't reached that acceptance. So I
Mhm.
think I think it's a process. I think it's like little bit by little bit, we're kind of chipping away at this professional facade. Um, and maybe it's not just about the workplace. I think society in general, we're starting to have more open conversations with each other,
Yeah,
as friends, as colleagues, as people in the community. So I think that then bleeds into the workplace as well.
yeah. Now, you mentioned that sharing your story not only built client relationship, but it also allowed other women to feel seen.
Mhm.
Can you tell us more about one of those connections that stayed with you?
Yeah, exactly. So it was the woman who I'd met previously and contacted me and said, "Hey, I've gone through exactly this."
Mm,
Um, and we stayed in touch as well. I kind of said to her, like, "Look, if you're struggling, you can't talk to anyone else. Like, here's my mobile number. You can talk to me. I've,
mm,
been there, done this. I know we don't know each other very well, but actually, I can still be in your corner." And I think it's putting out though by putting out your story, you kind of almost put out a lifeline to
mhm.
people who might be in that place. And
Yes.
you never know who is out there and
Mm,
going, "Oh, wow, yeah, that resonates with me." Um, and again, like I say, it's, can be personal as well as professional. Like I told a few people what I'd been through, and then I found out that people who were friends and family had been through this before, but I never
mm,
knew about it because it wasn't shared. But the problem
right.
was because I never knew about it, I also didn't get to go to them for support because I didn't
Yeah.
know they'd had the same experience. Whereas if we share this, we can bring people in and offer some support.
Mm. So, how did the moment of hitting rock bottom during your divorce, the mental health struggles, and the unwanted pregnancy shape your vision for life and business afterwards?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And I was talking to a friend last night. I was reflecting on this period of time
Mm,
because it really did feel like there was this kind of like gray cloud for a while, and I hit this point and I went, something needs to change, something needs to give. And what can I do to make things work for me now? So like I say, one thing was creating my own business in a way where I could work the way I wanted to.
yeah.
The other was going, instead of where do because I didn't need to stay in one place. Instead of where do I
Mhm.
wanna be in the world, it was who do I wanna be with? And I ended up moving to Australia and, spending time with my best friends from childhood who lived out there. I was like,
Right.
"These people have known me since they're little. It's a support network that I know I need, and it will be a fresh environment that I know would help." So it was a number of, like, big life decisions all at once, and
Mm,
I've read a concept about kind of post-traumatic growth, and it felt like that. It was suddenly this,
right.
like, a little bit of euphoria of going, "Okay, I see a direction. I can work towards something now."
Yeah, that's so good. Now, you left your corporate career to build something completely different.
Mhm.
What practices or norms from the corporate world did you consciously reject when creating your own business?
I think, a specific one is obviously about where and how you work. So,
Mhm.
me and my team don't all work in the same country, let alone in the same office.
Yeah.
We work asynchronously. We use digital tools to connect as opposed to having to be all online at the same time. And there's an inherent trust in that,
Mhm.
if you speak to someone, they say they're gonna deliver it, they deliver it on time. So it's kind of built
Right.
on a trust as opposed to needing to, like, see everybody. And that trust is then extended into the way we work with clients because I don't see
Yeah.
clients in person all the time. They know I'm working on things in different time zones or in my same hours, and that trust is extended that way. I
Yeah.
think one of the other things is the kind of collective model that, we've built, which is actually a team of experts coming together, each with their own expertise, each with their own backgrounds, and many of them also have other projects or personal passions or, singing in a band or running a charity on the side, and they
Yeah.
balance their work alongside those instead of going, "Oh, well, the thing that's paying me some money here has to take priority over everything." It's like, actually, it has
Mm,
to be a holistic part of your life.
I love that. Now, you've spoken about putting people and purpose over profit while
Mm,
keeping a business alive.
yeah.
How do you balance financial sustainability with values-driven leadership?
Yeah, I'll admit it's not the easiest one. There's a lot of spreadsheets. Um, I think it became a decision. It's like, you know what? obviously more money could be made if I wasn't focusing on purpose-driven projects, which tends to often include charities or very small businesses that don't have the huge budgets.
Yeah.
Um, but in doing that work, not only do I see the impact of the work that, of kind of putting out on a platform all these amazing projects and making
Yeah.
sure that they're seen, but actually the impact on myself and on the team who work with me, because we get joy from the work and then we love what
Yes.
we do. So lots of people will talk about values. I think if you
Mm.
really believe in something, you kind of have to put your money where your mouth is and
Yeah.
go, you know
Yeah.
what? There will be less money as a result. We can try and be smart about the way that we make it all work and make it balanced. But I just don't want to squeeze margins at the detriment of either the client or the people who
Mhm.
work with me, because they're all incredible people. And at the end of the day, if it means that it's not a long-term business or not a, huge profitable business, that's
Yeah.
fine. I'm happy doing a smaller thing well instead of kind of growing too big.
I like that. My last question for you is, if more leaders modeled the kind of openness that you practice, what kind of workplaces and business culture do you think we'll see in the next decade?
I think I think we'd see a lot more safety. I mean that in like the largest sense, but kind of
Yeah.
psychological safety. But there is a personal safety inherent in being able to talk about whether it's health issues or anything like that. Um, I think we'd see a lot less burnout. I think we'd
Yes.
see a lot less kind of mental health issues. The amount of people that I know who have hit a certain level in their career where they're really senior and then gone, right, I've hit a wall and I'm going to exit the industry entirely. It's
Yeah.
just a crazy amount of people, and the majority are women as well.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think then we'd see those businesses probably ultimately do better because they would keep the smart, brilliant people in their workplace delivering at the highest level they possibly can.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so true. Well, Ruth, thank you so much for coming online and sharing your amazing story with our community. Like I said,
Yeah, you're
it's such
welcome.
a
It's been
pleasure
great.
to have met you. I love your values, what you stand for, and yeah, just keep being you.
Thank
Change
you.
the
Thank you
business
for having me.
world one at a time. Thank you so much. Absolutely wonderful. What a great start to our evening or morning, wherever you are. My next guest comes to us. I think she's in the UK, but when I called her, the phone number did not look like the UK. So I'll just read her bio and she can tell you exactly where she is today. She is the second founder of Cold Creatives and Cold Labs and the co host of Let's Get Ugly podcast. Krishna's brand is 100% nonprofit, with all the proceeds going into Cold Cares, which are a free makeup workshop hosted internationally for those recovering from cancer, transitioning gender, or suffering from motor disabilities. She believes makeup should be a daily tool for everyone to boost self confidence. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to our tribe. Thank you so much for stepping up and coming to share your story. The stage is yours.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here today. A big part of my journey is about a variety of different things. A key part of, I guess, being a part of building a community is understanding that community as well, as I'm sure everyone here today is very, very familiar with. I would call myself a global citizen. So I was born in Hong Kong and raised there to Indian parents and moved over to the UK about 15 years ago, which is a really long time now, now that I think about it. But a key component of my journey was really kind of understanding different communities and understanding different ways of life. Growing up in Hong Kong in a multicultural environment, I certainly encountered quite a few challenges settling in and integrating. And for me, makeup was that tool that I was driven and drawn to. The idea of makeup and the idea of beauty empowering people is something that I've grown up around. I used to wear a little bit of eyeliner at the age of 14 and 15, and it used to give me this confidence. I started to refer to this as my armor. My armor was what I was using to be able to protect myself from the outside noise, and it gave me a sense of peace, comfort, and confidence. I grew up with that ethos kind of bubbling inside of me, and I knew that at some point it would lead me to building a career around that. Beauty empowerment is something that I've seen impact so many people in so many lives, most familiarly with the cancer care community. And as time kind of went on, I started to understand there are so many different communities out there that could do with that little sprinkle of being able to empower themselves through the power of makeup. I initially started offering free workshops for people within the cancer care community, as well as through the transgender communities. What I noticed quite quickly was that there wasn't a lot of support for the trans community, and there wasn't a lot of understanding of how makeup could be a valuable tool for them. I quickly started to create free workshops designed for people who were transitioning gender, either female to male to female, or non binary, and tried to use makeup as a tool to give them the access to be able to feel comfortable in their own skin. There's loads of wait lists and red tape to be able to get the appropriate treatment you want. And makeup sometimes can be that first step to showing the world who you are. Um, in order to keep the workshops free, we basically realized very quickly that we needed to create some kind of sustainability. And at the beginning, I was bootstrapping. I would run free workshops in lieu for paid workshops and fund money to be able to run the free workshops quite quickly and efficiently. But I realized that it was really a problem to scale. And if I wanted to support more people, I needed to be aware of what I could do to be able to scale quite quickly, but in a way where it was also effective as well. Growing up in Hong Kong, you kind of notice that there is definitely an overproduction problem and a pollution problem. And I realized that I really wanted to make sure that I was being sustainable and responsible in as many ways as I possibly could be. And I had chronic asthma as a result of the pollution index being really challenging. Now, we talk about pollution in a lot of parts of the world, and we talk about air quality in a lot of parts of the world. But fundamentally, when you're right next to that border of China, breathing that air in, I don't think we quite realize the impact of what it has on the populations around. I was a child that wasn't allowed to play on certain days because it was a risk to my health. I wasn't allowed to go outside, and it led to a lot of bullying. Of course, I'm sure we can all relate to being in that scenario as kids and teenagers and being bullied. But the external factors of where I was living, which was something I couldn't change at the age of 5, 6, 7, was something that I wanted to make sure that I wasn't contributing to with the business that I was creating later on in life. I very quickly realized that I could scale the workshops to people with different disabilities as well. And as a result, I started to understand that beauty empowerment was a great tool, but accessibility was a challenge. Imagine going to a workshop, showing up with all these wonderful goodies, eyeshadows, lipsticks, concealers, foundations, and then the brush is the struggle. They can't bring that amazing product to their face and use it. And that's where I noticed my first gap in the market. I then started to roll out more workshops as well as focus groups, understanding how different people with different disabilities see beauty, understand beauty, and also find a way to ensure accessibility for them to be able to use the tools that I'm bringing to them. It was clear that there wasn't anything suitable. And I started to do a little bit of research around the disability market. What I also started to notice with the disability market is it was a lot of gray. Nothing felt celebratory, nothing felt beautiful, nothing felt impactful. And I just wanted to try and create tools that we could all use. we, as in you and I, as well as those with different disabilities. So I started to understand grip, and it led me to my first few collections. But our collections are expanding as time goes on because we're starting to notice that, of course, disability is not a one size fits all. There are some brushes that stand, some that bend, some with braille on them. And we've evolved and adopted different practices as time's gone on. So all our packaging is inclusive. It's easy to open. They all have QR codes on them that are tactile, which lead you to audio guides to help you discover the journey of a box that maybe you can't read. In addition to this, sustainability, like I mentioned, was a really important factor. And so for us, being zero waste was really, really important. Zero waste is something that is kind of hard to achieve. It's more than recycled. But the idea is that you're taking something that is already in the system and converting it into something new to the point where when people are done with it, it will biodegrade, it will break down, and will go back into the environment in the most sustainable ways possible. I also ensure that the way that I produce is ethical. So that means that looking into the production, the factories, and ensuring that nobody's harmed in the production process, the delivery process, the shipping process, as well as the raw material harvest process. I would say, as time's gone on, I love the workshops and I love the power that makeup can bring. I love the fact that more and more people have access to accessibility, and it's a conversation that's being had more now than ever before. Of course, there is a big question that I often get asked, which is around what can people do if they want to be a part of the conversation? And sometimes just speaking about it is good enough. I'm aware that accessibility comes with its challenges and it comes with its own barriers to entry, cost, etc. But that doesn't mean that we just kind of leave it to everyone else. It's always good to be able to raise awareness around it and, point people in the right direction of resources that might support them in the long run. Um, as we've kind of looked at beauty empowerment, I've now launched on a new venture, which is Collab. And Collab is a free beauty school for people that need access to empowerment. It trains makeup artists with the greatest in the industry and creates a privileged environment for those that can't necessarily afford it to be able to train and go into the industry as makeup artists within a week, all done through the very generous support of brand sponsors as well as artist sponsors. And of course, I co host a podcast with my sister, Let's Get Ugly, which has been quite a very different access to the industry to be able to have the conversations that we're often too scared to have. But thank you so much for having me on. I'm really looking forward to answering a couple questions.
Wow, what an incredible project. It's so inspiring when I meet entrepreneurs who see a need in society and take on that responsibility to do something that can make a difference. It blows me away
Oh,
that you
thank you.
managed to do this. So where do I start? So you said that makeup became a tool for empowerment after being bullied as a teenager. What
Yes.
was the moment that you first realized that it could transform not just how you looked, but how you felt about yourself?
It's interesting. I often say that it's like putting makeup on a donkey because I don't think I actually looked that different, but it's is such a psychological state. And
Yes.
I just can't explain it. I mean, I feel that way when I curl my lashes now or I put a little bit of concealer on. It really is that journey to get through the next day and the next step. And um, I guess it was just that mirror reflection, You pop
Mm.
something on and you have that instant impact and you're like, wow. And I just think we all have something about our lives and something that makes us feel that way on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's just, it's fascinating. Now, Cole Creatives is unique in being 100% nonprofit. What inspired you to build a business model that gives everything back through Coleware's workshops?
I actually think it was more about the journey and about the way that I was really feeling. I mean, when I was doing the workshops for free anyway, which is kind of where it started,
Mm,
I really wanted to keep that and maintain that, and I wanted to be able to actually do something that felt right for the community. I feel like that was something that was really key.
yeah.
It's often about giving back to the community and being able to feel like it's a sense of collective empowerment. People are supporting each other in this way, and that was something that I really wanted. Of course, if you look into the financial implications of it, it's not easy, but I was really, really hell bent on that.
Mm, yeah, that's fascinating. Now, your workshops support people recovering from cancer, you said transitioning gender, and individuals with motor disabilities. Can you share a story of transformation from one of your sessions that has stayed with you?
It's actually a very interesting one, to be honest, but quite a sad one as well.
Mm,
One that will always stay with me is people feel like workshops are kind of a one and done, but we actually build long term relationships with people by seeing
yeah.
them again and again. And this journey was a journey over a year and a half. It actually involves a trans woman called Katie, who was living in Northampton and struggling with her identity and coming out. She basically ritualistically tried to take her life by setting all
Mm,
her garments on fire in her apartment. Unf
mm,
Unfortunately, as a result of that, the neighbor upstairs passed away, but Katie made it out alive with a lot of burns. So Katie then was put in a sectioned institution where she then was not only struggling with a sentence, but also struggling with her appearance and coming out to her ward. And over a year and a half, we helped teach her how to use makeup as a tool to look and feel like herself and eventually come out
mm,
to her ward. But as a result of the burns and the skin grafts, we were dealing with disabled grip, which where co-creative tools really helped kind of power the journey along, but also
mhm.
we were dealing with visible differences as well. So it was one really empowering example, but one example of where I felt not lucky and privileged to be able to get someone to feel like they could reintegrate even in that environment.
Wow, that's a very sad story. Now, as the co host of Let's Get Ugly, you openly challenge beauty standards. How do you balance running a cosmetic brand while also pushing against the industry's unrealistic ideals?
I feel like it's quite interesting because I will always definitely vet the corner of beauty. Like I love beauty and that's what makes it a balanced conversation. We
Mhm,
have a lot of unrealistic norms, but I feel like at the end of the day, it's always down to you and what makes you confident. And it's not very often that we talk about freely having Botox, for example, which
yes.
I'm super happy and super transparent to say that I have done. Haven't done it in about a year. Can't wait to do it again, to be honest, because at the end of the day, it is empowerment. And while I agree that we do have some really unrealistic beauty standards, I feel like we also have to accept that everybody's different and we all
Mm,
do things to make ourselves look and feel the best. Whether
yeah,
that is, coloring our hair in fun colors or whether it's injectables that make us look and feel more comfortable,
yeah,
um, or plastic surgery for that matter. I don't necessarily condone it for under 18s. I don't think it's appropriate. While unfortunately
yeah.
that is the way that the industry has moved. But I definitely think that when you're of an age, you're free to kind of do what makes you feel comfortable. And so
Mm,
that's kind of
mm.
the beauty of Let's Get Ugly. It lets us have both sides of the conversation. And I know which side of the fence I sit on.
Oh, man. Now, you describe makeup as your armor, and growing up in Hong Kong, how has this metaphor evolved now that you use beauty as a tool to empower others?
I think it's makeup is everyone's armor, but it's everyone's personal armor.
Mm,
So I feel like we teach them to use these skills as their armor. It's really a sense of ownership that we try and curate. It's not so
right.
much a glam session, it's definitely like a lesson. It's a lesson that you can come back to and learn and build your own self-confidence with. And so
Right.
that's why we still refer to it as my armor because it is their personal armor. And I hope to see more people use makeup as their personal armor to be
Mhm.
able to, build that connection.
I like that. Now, when you first began offering your free workshops for the cancer care and the transgender communities, what challenges did you face in getting people to recognize the value of makeup beyond the aesthetics?
I think, well, when it comes to the cancer care communities, it was very sensitive, to be honest, because I think what we
Mm,
forget is every community has different sensitivities and
right.
every community has different kind of goals when it comes to these workshops. So
Mhm.
personalization was one of the very quick challenges that I understood, because not everybody has the same needs when it comes to beauty.
Yes.
For example, when it comes to a trans workshop, it's very much around contouring. It's very much around creating face shapes and silhouettes that either
Mhm.
feminize you or masculinize you. With the
Right.
teenager trans workshops, it's also just about answering those like big sis questions. For example, if I have acne prone skin, what does that look like? What does that feel like? If I have, scarring from my acne, what products do you recommend? Sometimes it's literally basic hygiene depending on the state that they're in, because a lot of the trans teens that we see are living in care homes. And so they come to these workshops as finding a community of like minded individuals. So I guess
Right.
it was the personalization at that stage where I understood I really have to be ready for everything and anything, depending
Wow.
on who
Mm.
my audience is.
That's fascinating. Now, you mentioned noticing a lack of support and resources for the trans community. How has Coal Collectives helped to fill that gap? And what has been the response like from the participants?
Well, at the end of the day, when it comes to the trans community, in the UK specifically, there are a lot of barriers to being able to access hormone therapy. Takes about
Right.
a year of being on the wait list. You have to be sure that you want to do it. You have to demonstrate a certain lifestyle or evidence that you are who you say you are. Um,
Mhm.
and I think that it's incredibly unfair. And
Mm,
so we step in a pre-stage where you maybe don't necessarily, or any stage, you don't necessarily have access to those hormones, or you've just come out to your family. And
mm,
so we help build that bridge a little bit. In other countries, so for example, in Hong Kong, the workshops ran quite differently. They were in hidden rooms and estates where everyone got changed to be able to participate. They only got
mhm.
to experience being their true selves in those walls through those hours. And then they had to then go back to their
Real world.
lifestyle. Yeah.
Wow.
Because they're at risk. They risk their families by, being their true selves. In Thailand, it's a little bit different. It's much more
Right.
embraced. So our workshops
Yes.
are a supplement to a very beautiful acceptance of lifestyle.
Okay.
Um, and so everywhere in the world has their own kind of approach to how the trans community has access to resources that they need as well.
Yeah, so it depends from country to country. Some countries are a little bit more tolerant, others aren't.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, accessibility became a major focus for you when you saw people struggling to use the traditional brushes. How did you go about designing inclusive tools, and what has been the feedback?
That is a great question. Honestly, I think it's really important to highlight that every disability is different.
Yeah.
So when we first started out, my focus was making sure that everybody could grip them,
Okay.
understanding as well that not everybody could grip them.
Yeah.
What I mean
Yeah.
by that is an arthritic grip versus a Parkinson's grip can be quite different.
Different. Yeah.
The needs for somebody with multiple sclerosis versus the need of somebody with ALS is also going to be quite different. And I
Yes.
knew setting out that while I would try and build a happy medium, I wouldn't necessarily be able to have something that everybody could use straight off the bat.
Right.
So my first brush was essentially that it was a grip that was sensible enough to be used by everybody in a way where I knew there would be some outlying communities, but I would get to that with my next innovation. Uh,
Right.
and something that could stand, but something that looked beautiful, something that you were proud to have in your
Mm,
bathroom, in your vanity to showcase, this tool supports me, but it's beautiful at the same time.
yeah. That's so beautiful. Now, your collections include brushes that bend, that stand, and even feature braille. Can you share a story of how one of those innovations transformed somebody's experience with makeup?
Absolutely. Well, what's interesting is we don't really talk very much about neurodivergence, but even
Right.
with the hairs on our brushes, we actually designed them so that people with sensorial difficulties could use them.
Right.
Um, like I said, our workshop is probably our biggest resource to be able to see impact. And
Mm-hmm.
it was beautiful to see a 12-year-old girl with neurodivergence that had multiple different disabilities for the first time grab anything and want to put it on her face. Because we can
Wow.
use the tools not just for applying makeup, but also for cleansing and for skincare. And she was
Yes.
washing her face with it. And it was just one of those moments where you realize you've created something and it may not necessarily have been a big impact for you at the time, or may not have been a use that you thought would ever be used for, but you get to
Yes.
see it being impactful in someone else's life. So there's been a lot of stories with regards to, different communities being able to access makeup. Other kind of impactful stories we've had have been people that have spent their lives well into their 30s and 40s not being able to use makeup or being told not to use makeup because they
Okay.
were told that it was um, they wouldn't look disabled. That was kind of the societal issue. They might not look disabled if they had makeup on.
Okay.
The perspective that I don't think that a lot of people hear.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
and
interesting.
yeah, and so that was also another example of where somebody, was like, "Well, I just wanna look good. I wanna feel good. I wanna be myself."
Yeah. Oh, wow. So sustainability is the cornerstone of your brand, from zero waste packaging to ethical production. What does being a responsible beauty brand mean to you in practice?
Like I said, for me, it was a no-brainer because of the way that
Mm,
I grew up and the struggles that I had.
right.
I don't wanna put anyone in that situation again. Again, I say with the situation that I had to grow up
While
in.
you were in,
And I
yeah.
don't wanna contribute to that, and I think even though I'm a very small scale brand and I am just trying to make a difference, it is really important to me. It's probably one of the most important things I'd say about running a business today. It's great
Mm,
though,
mm,
because I feel like Gen Z specifically is starting to really pick up that conversation.
yeah.
You can see it a lot with when you kinda ask them, like, what matters to them, and it's always responsibility. It's always, independent. It's always, handcrafted or made with love. And so it's really nice to see a generation that actually advocates for it. Uh,
Yes.
yeah, I hope that the cost barrier of things doesn't put people off.
Mm,
Obviously, I
yeah.
reduced our margins as a result because I wanted to make sure that I was able to price fairly, but
Yeah.
it is a big cost on production.
How? But you keep the doors open, you keep going.
Yeah, we definitely do.
So you talked about pollution and the health risks in Hong Kong shaping your values. How do those early experiences continue to influence the decisions that you make as you develop your brand today?
I feel like Hong Kong is a very interesting environment to be in because it's fast paced, it's multicultural, it's a
Mm,
rapid hub, but equally at the same time, you go back there and you land in smog, you know?
yeah,
Like you're
yeah.
flying over the city and that's what you see. And it's
Mm,
a constant reminder, this is still a problem that exists today. Um,
right.
and it's down to different businesses and different owners to be able to say, like, hey, this isn't okay. I think cost obviously is a big factor, plays a big role in it. Uh,
Yes.
we ultimately are in different environments where different people feel the need to put profit over responsibility.
Yeah.
I hope that, the reminder of these environments that you enter into and the people that live there, they're the ones that suffer more than anybody else. And so
Yeah.
I hope that anybody that goes there to produce has that realization that this is the truth and the honesty of the way that people have to live as a consequence to, a Timu lamp or Amazon
Mm,
buy that was super cheap. I
yeah.
understand that not everybody can commit to that, but if you're a business owner, there are some little tweaks that I hope we can make.
Oh, that's good. My last question for you is looking back on your journey from being bullied as a teenager, experimenting with eyeliner to a global change maker, what advice would you give to young people who are struggling to find confidence in their own skin?
I would say that being your true self always pays off.
Yeah.
Whether that is grabbing the nearest tool or not, or building up your confidence in a mirror, or dressing in the way that you wish, being true to yourself is what's going to get you anywhere.
Right.
And sticking to that sometimes can be challenging, but it always pays off.
I love it. Well, I'll tell you, it's been such a pleasure meeting you, finding out about your story and the incredible work that you're doing. Diversity is such an important thing, and beauty brands don't always take everybody into consideration.
Yep, it's so
Thank
true.
you for your work. This was absolutely awesome.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys. Enjoy.
It's an absolute pleasure. And thank you to everybody who tuned in today. The Her Story Circle is not just a podcast, it's not just a speaking platform. We're a social impact movement that brings you the stories and voices of women from all over the world. We share our stories to uplift you, to inspire you, to energize you, but most importantly, to help take you from where you are now to where you're trying to go. Today, you've heard of an unusual brand that is thinking about all types of diverse people. Please reach out, find call collectives online, and support this cause and keep this business going. I'll be back again tomorrow, everybody, with yet another group of speakers. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And Trina, don't go away. Bye for now, everybody.